Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio, audio, no pictures live stream. Just as an aside, Tacitus has done a video on, or part of a three-part video on the strategic blunders that committed by Hitler and their relevance and their effect on the war. This is one with pictures on it, a video. I think it's quite good. So have a look at it. And if you have any sort of criticisms of it, please put it in the comments. I'd be interested in hearing them. Coming back to this essay, though, there's been an absolute an intense drama across the whole media landscape about supposed violence against women, domestic violence, intimate partners murdering women, and so on. So this is an epidemic. We're told it's a pandemic. It's a disaster like no other disasters. There is no greater problem in the world today than this. Is it the tens of thousands of homeless people? No, it's none of those things. This is the big issue. So we're told. Now, if it is a big issue, it's been a big issue for a long time. Every year it's a huge issue. Every year more money, it's a massive grift, of course. Every year more money is put towards it, to supposedly remedying the situation and turning it around and so on. So no matter, and going back from when I was a young man, it was supposedly a terrible problem back then, and it has continued to be a terrible problem, even though gazillions upon gazillions of dollars are thrown at it. Now it's all a gravy train. It's just a grift for upper middle class and women and socialites to run around and pretend they're important and they're dealing with important issues and addressing important issues and so on. This, of course, is absolute nonsense. There's a lot of people doing very, very nicely out of this, and of inventing all sorts of supposed crimes that are committed against women by evil, Hitler, fascist, Nazi men. Now, I just want to go over some of the points here, because the supposed remedy to all this alleged violence against women, the supposed remedy is teaching respect for women. If men will only respect women, then these things won't happen. So it's respect, as opposed to disrespect. Now, this is an interesting sort of take on things, because one of the things I remember, I was traveling the United States on business, and I saw an article about the key to everything was respect for women. You get respect for women, that's it, all other problems disappear, which of course is quite absurd, and it's an absolute fantasy, and quite delusional in my view. But nonetheless, this is, and around the same time or shortly thereafter, it was ping-ponging around the media in Australia. So we're talking 25 plus years ago here, and if not 30 years ago. And so I thought this was pretty silly, that the solution was respect for women. But where it sort of showed its disingenuous character was that the places where respect for women had to be shown were only in private schools, wealthy schools, and in Christian schools. That was where respect for women had to be taught. Now, if you do crunch the hard numbers, you'll quickly see that around 85 to 88% of all these crimes against women, be they assault or even up to murder, are committed by non-white people. They're in brown and black societies, or neighborhoods, or tribal areas, whatever. So there's and of the ones that happen in white areas, it's in the housing projects, people with a lot of mental health and drug addiction and gangs having shootouts. It's in those areas where crimes of every description are off the charts. So if you're looking at sort of the white middle class type crimes, or the white middle class type suburbs and families, then they're a very small proportion, 2 to 3%. 4% if you want to be really generous of the total. So, but yet it's this tiny area where the media and the activist class go after. It's only straight white boys, Christians. It's them. They're all fucking Hitler. And this is the constant refrain. And it was 25, 30 years ago, and it is today. So, they're all Hitler, they're all white supremacists, and they don't respect women enough. Now, the markers that they hang on to suggest that women aren't respected is that these boys may look at young women doing online porn. Now, the young women are doing the online porn, and some of them doing very well out of it, by the way. So it's not as if they're being forced to do it or they're slaves. Now, whether or not young boys should be looking at porn, you can look at, you can consider that. But it's only white boys when they do it are bad. Every other boy that does it, who cares? It's only white boys, particularly if they're Christian or upper middle class, that sort of thing. So the idea is that when boys look at porn, or if they view girls for their beauty or sexuality or something like that, then that's a huge, red flags go up everywhere. That's it. That's the beginning of violence against women. If these young boys like looking at girls in bathing costumes, that's it. The next step is hard drugs. The next step is murder. Bathing costumes, straight to murder. That's it. Done and dusted. Now, if we teach boys to respect women, then they won't consider women in any sense of beauty or sexuality or attractiveness and those. So that's the solution. Now, to suggest or imply that that's a solution, or that these white boys are the problem, is quite another matter. Now, if we look at the most dangerous places for women in terms of rape, murder, being beat up, that sort of thing, then all of these places are the most dangerous for women by far the most dangerous for women. All of these places are the main source of mass migration to the West and to Australia as well. So Australia and the West generally is bringing in societies that you could claim are misogynist or patriarchal. You're bringing mass migrating from those sort of societies to Australia and the West generally. And then saying, but the problem is all white people. It's all those white Christians and the school. It's them. It's the young boys. When clearly that's not the case. I mean, that allegation is beyond absurd. But this is the claim that they're making. They're only going after the white boys. And there's recently a case where some white schoolboys, senior high school, as I understand it at least, had made a list of the chicks they thought were the hottest chicks in school. And this has become a national headlines. I mean, the media class went into absolute overdrive over this, because there's white Christian boys that were identifying hot chicks, what they thought were hot chicks at school. And this was somehow a crime exceeding all crimes. It was the crime of crimes. No crime could be greater than this. Young boys thinking chicks in their school were hot. Oh, fuck. Take them out back and fucking shoot them. So this is the level of debate, but it comes back. So I was watching a discussion between two supposed experts on domestic violence. They're not experts at all. They're radical leftist activists who are just confirming each other's prejudices, that it's all evil, straight white Christian men, white supremacy, Hitler, and they didn't deviate from that script really. But when it came to the subject, okay, so it's an absolute disaster, crime of crimes, women being murdered left, right, and centre. And not only is Australia one of the safest places for women in the world, relative to other countries. So if it's an epidemic in Australia, then it's an off-the-charts epidemic elsewhere. So on a relative basis, there's no fucking epidemic. And again, it's nearly all in the area of brown and black people. But if it is such a problem, what can be the solutions? Because they've been claiming it's been a huge problem, an epidemic for, again, at least 30, if not 40 years. So every year they trot out the same stuff. It's the same, faux outrage. It's all white men that are doing it. They're not totally unprepared to go after the people that are doing it. for wokeness reasons. Because if you're going to claim that brown and black people are the problem, then you're a racist, you're a fascist, you're a Nazi. So they can't do that. So they have to always say it's white people. Only white people, white men must be controlled. We must control white men because they're all fucking Nazis. Now, which again is absurd. But coming to the nub of it was, well, what could be done is the thing. It's all very well to say how terrible it is. It's a disaster. It's this, it's that. Okay, well, what are you going to do? Well, we're going to throw fuckloads of money at it. Okay, all right, then what is that money going to achieve? Practically, realistically, what are we going to do to stop it? And that's where they go fairly quiet because I don't really know. It's and they just have a miasma approach that, well, it's just men. Men are the problem. Men. That's what the problem is. They're all Hitler Nazis, men. So without really looking at any practical measure, if indeed it is, as they say. So we have to strengthen, there are things that, well, women have to be able to get apprehended violence orders much more easily. So instead of having to go into the court, and get it signed off, remember, they don't need evidence. Women can just walk straight into the court to a chamber magistrate, as they call it, and say, I'm on a domestic violence order against Billy Bob. Well, what's he done? Oh, he threatened me. Done. That's it. So, boom. And she's got a domestic violence order, which then registered with the police and so on. So now no evidence is required, remember, at this point. None. So to say that this is some sort of a desirable situation where someone else can be controlled and told where they can and can't go on the basis of no evidence. Now, if that person wants to contest the matter, they can, but it's all at their expense and time. She can do it for free. He has to do it at his own expense and time if he wants to contest it. Some men do. Now, the burden of proof the man has to meet is quite high, whereas the burden of proof she has to meet is quite low. So it's already, the domestic violence orders are heavily stacked in favour of women. Can they go any further than this? Well, they do. One of the suggestions was that a woman shouldn't even need to go into the court. She can just pick up the telephone or do it online. Just fill out a form online and bingo, the bit of paper comes back. Well, no evidence and nothing there. You don't have to go anywhere. Just that's it. Phone it in. So that's one of the suggestions. I wouldn't be surprised if that's adopted, actually, but lower the bar of evidence even further. So now the other suggestions that have come, that there must be or should be special how to respect women courses and traveling hit squads that go around to all the schools, and attendance is compulsory for boys. Attendance is compulsory, where the boys are harangued for hours on how they're all a bunch of fascist Nazi rapists and have got to mend their ways and show respect for women. So you get this angry butch dyke lesbian who's coming along telling these boys they're all evil. And they have to mend their ways. I'm sure that's going to work well. I'm sure that's really going to cut some ice there. And boys should be forced to attend re-education camps. We have to go. Now, notice that the people that are required compulsory attendance, it's the straight white boys. It's not the brown and the black boys. It's only the straight white boys. And they want the schools to do things like threaten expulsion if the boys don't turn up to these ideological, fanatical bullshit, harangues. So that's one thing, and that they claim will teach respect for women. Let's see how that works out. Now, they've already been doing that. My son was subject to one of them. This is in primary school, so he was, 10 years old or something at the time, and he thought it was so ridiculous. 10 years old. He thought it was so ridiculous. This really weird lady, and she's really angry, and she really, and then and she was telling him. Even 10 years old, he thought it was bullshit, and that's the first time I heard about it. So I approached the school back then and said, "Look, if you want to give political indoctrination to my children, then that's one thing." But they put it under they categorized it not as political indoctrination. It was called something like respectful relationships or something like that, something quite innocuous that you wouldn't necessarily have picked up on. And then they categorized that under social studies. We're having a social studies class with an outside speaker coming, are you okay with that? Social studies, yeah, okay, social studies, why not? But they didn't tell you what it was about. So my complaint to the school was, hey, look, if you want to do this political indoctrination, don't try and call it something else. Tell me as a parent, tell me what it is, and then we'll, then we can deal with it. But that's quite duplicitous to slip it in like this. And similarly, it's just an ideological rant. There's nothing there about respect, mutual respect. It's all evil boys, oppressed girls. It's just purely ideological and nothing practical. Now, the next thing that came up that was, what's going to solve this problem of violence against women was they want men to stop other men. So the idea here is that if there's a man, and they want to say that even anything, including a joke that may be considered as sexist, not is or purposefully is, but may be considered a sexist, a joke, other men must stop the man telling the joke. So men have to stop men. Men have to bully men. And so men bullying men will stop men bullying women. And this is a solution to what exactly? Now, that's going back to as I remember as a kid. So we're talking like, from when I was a young kid, I remember this 60s and 70s, that sort of stuff, where men sort of pretending to be big, hairy-chested heroes to protect the honor of a woman was very widespread when I was a kid. And women used to play on it horribly, as I recall. So the idea that a woman could go to one man and say, I want you to beat that other man up for me, and then I'll let you fuck me type thing. That was quite widespread, and it was considered normal that one man would beat up another man to protect the honor of a woman. And women and men played up to this, using it as an excuse to show how manly they were, or for a girl to show what a poor little girlie I am. I need a big, strong man, big, strong, hairy-chested man to protect me from other men. And I took even as a kid, I took a dim view of this, and I didn't like, because I watched a number of scenarios unfold when I was a kid where there was a woman in it was like I don't know, we'd call it like a takeout food place that also had an amusement parlor and other shit sort of connected to it. And she, this would have been a low paid job, and she was, your angry single mum sort of type person, but and angry generally. So she would pick fights with men. So, a guy would come to, I don't know, I'll simplify it. A guy would come to order a burger, for example. And she would say, "What did you say to me? You say that again, and this time, you say it nicely," or something like. She constantly pick. And I was there watching, some of these, because she's always doing it. And the guy had been perfectly polite as far as I could tell, but she would pretend that he'd been rude to her or wounded her, and then she would refuse to take his order for the burger, for example. Then she would say, "Well, you're just a bastard," and then he would say, "Well, you're just a bitch." "Oh, you called me a bitch!" Oh, and then she would find a man somewhere. The next guy that came in was a big, solid guy, and she would say, because she picked weedy guys to fight with, because she didn't want to run the risk the big, solid guy would clobber her. So she always picked weedy guys to do this with, and I saw it a number of times. So then she would say to, the big guy or someone she knew or anyone around, didn't matter. You should go to a guy and say, "Beat him up for me. He's been rude. Beat him up for me." And if the guy was simple-minded enough, or could be manipulated easily enough, then he would do that. And so I watched situations where these weedy men were being punched and slapped around because this woman had orchestrated the confrontation and put him up to it. So what these feminists today are wanting is a return to those days where one man will beat up another because that man may have said a joke that some woman might have considered as sexist. So all some woman needs to do is say, oh, he's offended me, I find that offensive. Oh, you have to beat him up for me, or that sort of thing. Now, I don't know whether return to that's a good thing, or whether it's going to, I think it's going to further marginalise women, away from the central core of any respect. I mean, respect is something, if you behave in a certain manner, you will gain respect naturally and organically. The argument these activists put forward is women can never gain respect until men change their view or the view of men is all behavior of men, and the views of men are altered so that no matter how a woman behaves, she's entitled to maximum respect at all times and protection from other men. But as soon as you say woman needs protection from other men, then how can she also be respected? There's a she then becomes a victim. If she's then a victim, how can she then gain respect for equality? It just doesn't work. Nor can you force her. You must respect so and so. So that's not how it goes. You can respect merit and achievement and accomplishments and all sorts of things, but not being forced to respect somebody while at the same time they're being treated as an entitled victim. The two just don't go together. So now I remember other situations like that here's one. I was a young man this is like in a pub or a bar somewhere, and in those days, in particular bars, they had like ladies. I think it was called the ladies' lounge or something like that. And then you had the main bar, which was where all the men went, and there was swearing and cussing and all sorts of things. But there was a walk in this particular bar. There was a walkway between one ladies' lounge and another, and this sort of thing. And that walkway sort of was adjacent to where the men's lounge was. There were always men I noticed who would excuse me, always men who would, if a woman or women were walking through this walkway to get from one lounge to the other, there'd always be a man and say, "There's a lady in the house, stop your fucking swearing," and something like that. So, and they were always these sort of hero guys that could only ever get laid if they were acting tough and pretending to be a protector of women. So and they would approach other men and say, "Stop swearing, you got a problem with that, there's a lady walking through." And this was a bit of a now I remember one of the guys was doing that. He was constantly doing his bit of a thing, and one time I went there and his face was a mess. He'd been beaten up pretty badly from the looks of it. So but his the thing of sticking up for women or pretending to wasn't because he respected women or because he thought highly of women. It was a way of him just showing what a big tough guy he was, or pretending to be. And someone called his bluff, and he couldn't back it up, and he got beaten up. And I noticed the hero guys who were sticking up for women would only pick on the weedy little dudes. To say, well, you weren't respecting women, you weedy little fuck, and I'm gonna slap you around for it. So I don't know that this would be a step forward in social development at all. I would suggest not. So coming back to the remedies, they don't have any remedies. I mean, it's not an issue, this violence against women outside of, again, the black and brown communities. So it's not an issue, and the issue, the solution, assuming there's a problem to be dealt with in this way, the solution is to go into these brown and black communities and do work, not to go chasing after white Christian boys in high school. That's beyond absurd. It's quite ridiculous. But yet that's considered as the main enemy. It's also coincidentally the main enemy of the globalist ideological project. So it's perhaps hardly surprising they're trying to lever off a supposed epidemic of something that they've invented to go after white boys. But this idea of lowering the burden of proof, so women can just phone in, apprehended violence orders, AVOs, or indoctrination camps for white Christian boys. and the idea of men beating each other up to support the honour of a woman or protect the honour of a woman. None of these are going to work. Also, women have to stop being their own worst enemy. Now, in response to this, whenever this comes up, oh, you're just victim blaming, you damn fucking fascist Nazi Hitler. And yet, I watched the situation a while ago. I was sitting at a cafe waiting for my wife who was shopping, and I was sort of staring off in distance in a bit of a dream state, reading newspapers, that sort of stuff. And there was a guy, like a table just in front of me, or a couple of tables in front. And same sort of thing. His wife had gone shopping. I'd seen her saying, you could hear it from where I was, gone shopping, and she came back. Now he was sitting in the chair next to the wall where the outside tables were. So she approached the table and she drew parallel with my table, and she looked at it, and I could see the calculation going on. She looked at and instead of there were 3 chairs that she could approach from the street side and the sidewalk side of things, but instead she went around the back of his chair, in between his chair and the wall, which was just a few centimeters wide, and she walked deliberately. She calculated it, and she walked straight into that, and which took him by surprise. He turned around, sort of startled. Who's that? And then she did this pained expression. Look what you're doing to me. I'm just trying to sit down. And look what you've done to me. And this was her thing. And she made a bit of a go of it. And he pointed out quite obviously, well, there are 3 other chairs here. You could have sat in any of them. Oh, that's it. You're just trying to blame. You're always trying to put me down. And so she turned it into a big, but she calculated the whole thing. Now, as long as women behave in that way, and many do, then they won't get the respect. So we have to look at how to change women's behavior as being a key component to this issue of domestic violence or any sort of domestic disputation. And until women accept that, nothing will change. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.